technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
In Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump is poised to impose a set of sweeping new tariffs today on products from all other countries. He says this is the way for the U.S. to regain income and create more American jobs. Many economists say these tariffs could lead to a recession. Diane Swank is chief economist for KPMG U.S. She says tariffs also bring unintended consequences, just like some tariffs during Trump's first term in office.
We know, for instance, from the 2018-2019 tariffs, higher tariffs on steel did create more jobs in the steel sector, but at the expense of overall manufacturing jobs because inputs costs went up and manufacturers actually slipped into a manufacturing recession.
She spoke to NPR's Morning Edition. 2 members of the U.S. House of Representatives have brought business in that chamber to a halt for the rest of the week. NPR's Deirdre Walsh reports they're fighting to pass bills letting new parents cast votes remotely in the House.
Florida Republican Anna Paulina Luna and Colorado Democrat Brittany Patterson are trying to change House rules so that new parents could vote by proxy for up to 12 weeks around the birth of a child. GOP leaders opposed their bill and designed a measure to kill it, but 9 Republicans joined all House Democrats to defeat their effort. Luna says it's a win for parents.
Today is a pretty historical day for the entire conference. It's showing that the body has decided that parents deserve a voice in Washington, and also to the importance of female members having a vote in Washington, D.C.
The vote also blocked action on all other bills scheduled for this week. House Speaker Mike Johnson said he was disappointed. He said leaders would regroup and try again to block them next week. Deirdre Walsh, NPR News, the Capitol.
Voters in Wisconsin have chosen the Liberal-backed candidate to fill an open seat on the state's Supreme Court. From member station WUWM, Mayan Silva reports on the Wisconsin judicial race that drew tens of millions of dollars in outside funding and attention from President Trump.
Susan Crawford touted her common sense and experience representing Planned Parenthood and labor interests. Her opposition, Brad Schimmel, was endorsed by Trump and funded to the tune of at least $25 million by billionaire Elon Musk. Voters like Serena Sato, who knocked on doors for Crawford, said that the message is that democracy wins and that Musk and Trump's actions are deeply unpopular.
When we talked to people over and over, they were furious with what they are doing to the federal government, furious that Musk is trying to buy their votes.
Spending in the race is expected to tally in at more than $100 million, the most expensive judicial race in American history. For NPR News, I'm Ayan Silver in Milwaukee.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
You're listening to WJCT News, 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning, I'm Stephen Ponson. It is now 9:04. Residents of the historic black community of American Beach are about to sue Nassau County to try and put a stop to driving on the beach. The residents are accusing the county of violating the Endangered Species Act because endangered sea turtles that nest on the shore are at risk of being harassed, wounded, or killed by vehicles. Nassau County strongly disagrees with the accusation, according to its lawyer. Residents are also concerned about damage to the dunes, which are losing their ability to recover from storm damage. The lawsuit could be filed as soon as mid-April. Legislation that would put more restrictions on the use of cell phones while driving in Florida is ready to be heard by the full Senate. The Senate Rules Committee approved a bill Tuesday that would prohibit the handheld use of a wireless communications device for any reason while behind the wheel. The measure would expand Florida's current ban on texting while driving to include anything else that requires holding a cell phone, such as checking social media, looking at maps, and watching videos. Senate bill sponsor Aaron Grawl says distracted driving in Florida is a major problem.
It takes us digging in and saying we are going to change our behavior because we know this is as bad, if not worse, than drunk driving.
Though the legislation is ready to be heard by the full Senate, a similar bill in the House has yet to be heard. Will be warm today in northeast Florida. Highs will reach the lower 80s along the coast, lower 90s inland, and we do have a chance for a few thunderstorms to develop inland this afternoon as well.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indeed, committed to giving job listings increased visibility with relevant candidates through its sponsored jobs feature. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, a conservation success story paves the way for a potentially controversial black bear hunt. We discuss the possibility ahead of a series of public meetings that begin today. Later in the program, we welcome the host of the weekly Florida Roundup ahead of his live show broadcast here this week. But first, it's been 10 years since the state held its last black bear hunt. Wildlife officials are weighing whether to stage another, but some advocates are strongly opposed. Here to discuss it is Adam Sugalski. He's the founder and executive director of the advocacy group OneProtest, who's opposed to the hunt. Welcome, Adam.
Oh, welcome. Thank you for having me on today.
We're also going to incorporate some voices today of people who support the hunt. We also welcome your calls and comments. You can reach us at 904-549-2937. You can email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on Instagram, Facebook, or X at FCC On Air. Adam, state officials say that the bear populations in the state are flourishing after years of hunting restrictions, and that some controls on this population are needed. What is your take on that?
Well, I kind of disagree with that because even by the FWC even says they have incomplete bear data and the population numbers won't be assessed, but the populations won't be finalized until 2030, and then they'll know how many bears there are. So this to me is a very premature action to actually have a bear hunt when you don't know the numbers. It goes against their conservation, scientific organization, but why are they doing this when they don't have the numbers?
So there hasn't been, as you say, this sort of updated bear count, but at its December presentation of its Florida Black Bear Management Plan, the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission told the board that basically the bear population is about 5 times above the minimum population objectives, which are the standards set to maintain a healthy bear population. And so whether there's an exact count or not, their assessment is that it is a healthy enough population that it could withstand some culling.
Well, in our minds, this is a trophy hunting is what they're basically talking about. Bears regulate their own populations by delayed implantation when a female is impregnated. If there's a lot of food, she might have more cubs. If there's not a lot of food, she might not have any cubs. So we think bears can regulate their own populations, and we don't need a bunch of people in the woods killing bears for trophy, for bragging rights. And we want them to be left alone. They're an umbrella species. They're very important to the ecosystems. And that's our stand. It's it's a trophy hunt. Bears don't need to be culled this way.
So bear sightings and bear-related calls to FWC, that's the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, they say that those are at an all-time high, those calls, up 42% from 2016. Not all of them negative, though. Those are whether they're calling to report a sighting versus whether they're calling to complain, those numbers haven't really changed.
In a lot of those numbers are from when people, it's like bear-proof trash cans. A lot of these calls can be mitigated if people will actually put their trash away. And when you build new homes near the woods and you don't put your trash away, what do you expect is going to happen? Bears are kind of lazy. They want a free meal and they're going to go through your trash. And so this is a people problem, not a bear problem. And I think when you have these calls, it's like, what's our first solution to get a bullet and kill a bear because we're not doing what we should be doing? We should blame ourselves for these issues, not bears.
So Florida has some 17,000 square miles of bear habitat. I guess only about half or maybe a little less than that is actually protected, though. Is that right?
I'm not actually sure those numbers, but I know with bear habitat, a lot of it's fragmented. So you might have roads going through. So it's very hard for these different bear populations to kind of integrate with each other. So, but I don't know. There is private land versus public land, like Ocala, Osceola, those kind of forests, which I know that's where I think they are protected.
So it's unclear, I guess, at this point, we should say whether FWC is going to ultimately recommend this bear hunt to the board. So they went in December, they made their presentation of this bear management plan. At the time, they were not recommending a bear hunt. I mean, the staff was not recommending a bear hunt to the board, but the board said they wanted a discussion of that anyway. And they basically gave the directive to staff to say, come back with a proposal that at least looks at the possibility of a bear hunt.
Yes. And they've been having meetings that way, meetings getting public input with hunters. I've been on several of those meetings. They're asking what kind of like weapons would you use, an arrow, bow, black powder, when would you want to have the hunt? And for your average person, these questions like, well, I mean, what we think, especially with art, when I spoke, one of them, archery is horrible for bears. I think it's a misconception that people have that, you shoot a bear with a bow and it goes down. I mean, unless you hit a direct heart shot, but bears, most times they get shot through the lung and they'll suffocate in their own blood and run off. And no hunter, they're not going to chase a wounded bear in the woods. That's kind of a given because the bear will be defensive, will be angry. So those are some of the questions they asked. So we think they're going to come back in the May meeting, May 21st and May 22nd, which we encourage everybody to go to the FWC meeting. And everyone can go to beardefenders.org and get any information about our petitions and calls to action. I just want to put that in there. Back to the point as far as with the FWC having the hunt, Gary Lester was the commissioner, one commissioner is really pushing this. And so that's where we're kind of also, we don't know what's behind that. I think he's probably getting pressure from his constituents.
Yeah, and he was the one who said at that meeting, he said, I'll be very succinct, I would like to see a proposal from staff for a bear hunt. So we should say we reached out to to Florida Fish and Wildlife, and they said they, quote, could not accommodate our request for a comment at this time. But we do know that there is support for a hunt. Mark Barton with Backcountry Hunters and Anglers has spoke at that same December meeting, and he said that the bear population is thriving and it could easily support a limited and highly regulated bear hunt. Let's hear a little bit more of what he had to say.
I'm disappointed that the staff presentation did not include hunting as a management tool for black bear, especially in the areas where the populations are too high. I understand this is a controversial topic and you probably would rather not deal with it, but you have to. It is not only a waste to allocate state resources to deal with nuisance bears and clean up vehicle collisions and things like that, but it's unfortunate that the bear should suffer this kind of a fate, and this can be mitigated by reducing the populations where it's needed.
So what do you say to that?
I love how he's like, he mentions about bears suffering and mitigate the damage. Well, so you going in the woods and blowing it away with a shotgun or 308 or hitting with an arrow, that's not doing damage to the bear. So, I mean, we have this, deer populations have to be managed by people because there are no more predators. We pretty much killed off all the predators. So they can't really self-manage, but bears can self-manage like I mentioned before. So we're just diametrically opposed to bear hunting. We think they're under enough pressure from development, everything else. I'd wish some of these hunters would actually take the opposite view and want to protect them. I mean, everyone's very short-sighted. Like we're looking at the next few years. What's Florida going to look like in 50, 100 years? And when are we really going to take a hard look and protect these ecosystems where the bears are? Because we protect bears, we protect a lot of other species that they're around.
The confrontations that, bears have with humans are most often occurring in places where there has been development, in subdivisions, in residential areas that have perhaps, are adjacent to or perhaps have encroached on some traditional wild areas. But, these hunts would be taking places in more densely forested places, I guess, and not necessarily in the areas where we're seeing these
nuisance bears, basically what they call them. No, you're absolutely right. The bears that they're going to go after are in the woods, not bothering anybody. The bears are talking about, they're not going to be next to a neighborhood shooting a bear coming down the street. So there's a little bit, I think, their arguments, they're saying they want to help, mitigate these, but yet they're going to be going after the bears that aren't causing any problems.
If you're just joining us, we are talking about a possibility of bringing a bear hunt back to Florida, a black bear hunt. And if you'd like to join our conversation, we welcome your calls and comments. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media. We have a call from Susan Hargreaves. Good morning, Susan. Go ahead.
Good morning. I have been fighting and attending the FWC meetings since 1986, and it might be shocking to a lot of your listeners to learn that most of them are hunters, and you would think that conservation and hunting are absolute opposites, and that's because they are. And having hunters making decisions about killing bears is so wrong. And that is why we once again are facing this battle. And so many organizations are united against this. And our Animal Hero kids, a lot of the children spoke out against killing bears at the last one. And everyone may remember how the images of all of the bears being killed went around the world.
Yeah.
And
Thanks, Susan. I mean, those are some of the images that you, in fact, collected yourself, Adam. Can you talk a little bit about, first of all, what happened the last time there was a black bear hunt in Florida? And just remind us of kind of what happened, and also how you were able to get some of the images that you were.
Well, they hadn't hunt in 2015 was the first hunt they had in over 20 years because they'd stopped all bear hunting because they were being pretty much wiped off the face of Florida. So they had a hunt in 2015. I went to check station 17 in Lake City and documented the bears being killed. In the first one I took a picture of was a lactating female. So obviously there was no cubs with her, so we don't know what happened to her cubs. So those images did go around the world. I got interviewed by several papers in the UK. There's a story Australia, France, Germany. I even talked to someone who was on the Sea Shepherd ship fighting on the whale wars. He called me from the ship to congratulate me on getting the images and protesting. And then in 2016, we went to the meetings. Our group spearheaded, along with other groups, 28 city protests all around Florida at the same time. And then because of the images, the protesting, all these people speaking at meetings, and they finally decided. Brian Yablonsky, the chairman, decided to call a hunt off. It was like 3-3, 3 commissioners for it, 3 against it. He was a tiebreaker, and one of the things he said was like, hunters, you have a lot of great hunting opportunities in Florida, and maybe Floridians just can't stomach a bear hunt. They don't want it, and so he sided with the populace not to have it because the super majority of Floridians are against this. Hunters make up less than 1% of the population of Florida, and Susan did make a good point where she talked about like you have this conservation commission when it's made up of land developers, attorneys. I don't see one conservationist on the commission. Like, why don't they have a biologist, someone? So it's kind of a very skewed commission. That's very one thing I like to say with them is like, in their minds, like, conservation does not begin and end with a bullet. It's like, but that's the way these organizations think. And we think, the public needs to get more involved in these decisions.
Well, you talk about a supermajority of the state not supporting black bear hunting of this kind. And yet, just recently in November, the state voters approved Amendment 2, which is known as the right to hunt and fish. That got a 67% approval of voters, the supermajority that was required to put it into the Constitution. It basically makes hunting the, quote, preferred means of wildlife management. So how do you square those two things?
That amendment was so vague. I had so many people that voted for it accidentally. They didn't know. If you read the amendment, it was very confusing. It's very blanket. So I don't know. So what? So now you can just hunt and whenever you want, and that like the preferred method. I don't really understand. Like, it's very confusing what that actually means. So, but then also to remember, happened HB 87 passed, which is the one where basically right now there's already a stand your ground law where if you're in your property and a bear attacks you, you protect yourself and kill the bear. HB 87 allows you to kill a bear if you feel threatened or it's damaging your property. So if a bear walks in, starts pushing on my fence, well, I can just shoot it now. And there's no investigation. The FWC might not even come out and pick up the body. So bears are already under pressure from that now. And to actually do a hunt, like it's too much for them. I think we need to really put the brakes on this.
So you mentioned HB 87, and that was signed into law by the governor last year. That basically is kind of known as the Self-Defense or Stand Your Ground Against Bears Act. It allows for someone, if they feel threatened and they're on their property, to kill a bear, and it basically prevents the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission from investigating as they typically would be able to. It was sponsored by in the House by Representative Jason Schoaf, and he had sort of a comedic take on the legislation and the need for it. Let's just take a little listen back to that meeting from the last legislative
session. Bears on crack. I'm sure the bears on crack quote.
This bill is not about bears. We keep saying it. We love bears. Bears are cute and cuddly and an amazing creature. This is about a nuisance bear. We're talking about the ones that are on crack and they break your door down and they're standing in your living room growling and tearing your house apart. So when you run into one of these crack bears, you should be able to shoot it.
So obviously, there haven't been any reports of bears on crack. There had been a movie called Cocaine Bear that perhaps I was inspired by. It was not clear that he was, 100% serious about those comments, but he did believe that there was a right for people, if a bear comes on your property and is threatening you or your loved ones, which is kind of the language of the supporters, that you should have a right to protect yourself. What do you say to people who believe that they should have a right to protect themselves?
That law already exists. Stand your ground. That the law exists. Now, if it happened before HB 7, the FWC would investigate. So now there's no more investigation. So I can say anything. I can lie, admit, well, I felt threatened, and I just killed a bear. So it kind of wipes away any accountability for the person.
It would have to be on your property, although I guess it could be an expansive piece of property depending on how large of a landowner you are.
Well, also too, if you're walking through the national park and a bear attacks you and you have a gun, you can shoot it. Right before that, you could, and the FWC would investigate, ask questions. But now you don't have. There's nothing. Like you can say, well, I felt threatened, it got near me.
I want to circle back a little bit to the constitutional amendment that voters approved, that right to hunt and fish. How did that change things in terms of the management plan of Florida Fish and Wildlife, or the priorities of perhaps the board members? Is that constitutional amendment impacting how they look at the bear population?
That's something I really can answer because I don't know that. I haven't heard them using that to push a bear hunt, but I'm assuming it's in the back of their minds. And I'm sure that this argument will be used at the May meeting when hunters go up and speak for the hunt. But there'll also be hunters speaking against it. I know there are hunting groups that are not. I've heard hunters they're deer hunters, but they don't like bear hunting.
But if the constitutional amendment requires that hunting be the preferred means of wildlife management, does that somewhat constrain the options that they have if they're looking to manage the bear population? If hunting is, designated the preferred means by law.
Yeah, that is a good point, and I think that will be what the commissioners determine, whether they'll outweigh the public versus the hunter's wishes. Because you're right, it says that, but I think the commissioners they can vote against it. Like they do have a choice to push a hunt or not a hunt.
So today we mentioned earlier there begins a series of public comment sessions. There was this meeting in December. There was another meeting in March. Ultimately, we're moving towards a decision that would be made sometime at these meetings in May. But what's happening starting today and over the next few days?
Well, I know they're having meetings where they're wanting public input on what a hunt would look like how many days, what weapons, locations, times, that kind of thing. That's what they're getting inputs. What happened was they had a meeting a few weeks ago. There were so many people, like 500 people were on the meeting. I think they realized there was too many and it's hard to manage. So I'm assuming they're doing more meetings to get more public input. So they can say, hey, we listen to people, and they can present a hunt to the commissioners on May 21st and 22nd.
And what do we know about kind of what public comment, what purpose it serves in these decisions? How are the comments collected, used to formulate a decision or a recommendation?
Well, what I've seen is they're basically getting all the top comments, and I think they're going to collect, and then I don't know how they're doing the input, but I'm sure they're going to put it into like a spreadsheet and figure out, it's okay, so like 50% at this time. They'll probably just like dissect all the comments and then propose to the commissioners, this is what the hunters, how they want to see hunt, when they want to see hunt, and what weapons they want.
What decisions do you think are going to matter to these commissioners when they make this decision?
I think there is time to put pressure on them, to talk to them, call them, comments. There's, like I said, if you go to our website, beardefenders.org, we will have like calls to action, how you can reach out to the commissioners. And then if you sign the petition will keep you updated on new things happening with the proposed bear hunt. So we think it's like last time, we have to make our voices heard. We think that wildlife is a trust for all Floridians. It's not just owned by the hunters, and so we want a seat at the table for this.
The population of Florida, during the time of the bear population increased, and they're sort of happening on two separate tracks. Between 1960 and today, the population grew from about 5 million people in Florida to about 20 million people. And up until, the 70s, bears were really moving towards extinction. Can you remind us just about what the effort was to mitigate the decline of bears, what measures were put into place, and then just more about the interaction between the growing population of Florida?
Well, the reason because bears really had no protections back then. So anyone could kill a bear. There was no seasons, and so they're being poached a lot. And so basically, that's when they put the brakes on. So bears did have protections, and I think when a species is protected, it'll you still have bad actors going after them, but your average hunter probably will not take a bear. And so they did rebound, and so we think with the population growing in, you're getting these more bear interactions with the garbage cans, like I mentioned before, human-bear conflicts. And if people put their trash away and be mindful and they coexist with the bears, I think we can get rid of a lot of these issues we're having with bears being called in. It's like a problem we've solved, and I think we created, and we need to fix it ourselves without the end ultimately just killing a bear.
I mean, there are some practical tips. You talked about bear trash cans, and those there are some that are sold that can help prevent bears from getting into like an easy snack like that.
Yeah.
But there's also some things I don't think people traditionally realize or think about, like bird feeders.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some of the interactions that are problematic and ways that people can control that?
Well, bird feeders, your grill, like if you have a really dirty grill, the bears might come and dig through that. If you leave your garage open, you have dog food in there, and like we've seen it where a bear was in someone's garage and the woman was walking her dog and I think she fell or something. That was a few years ago. But usually it's things that we can fix by just being more mindful that there are bears in the area, and can we put the attractants away to keep these interactions from happening.
Yeah. Susan, I know that you've been holding there and you wanted to give some information about bear numbers. Go ahead, Susan.
Yes, on May 4th, there's a rally at Lake Eola Park at 12 noon in Orlando. That's a rally for the bears. My experience with the FWC since 1986 makes me aware that they are going to go ahead with a bear hunt, and it's an actual farce to pretend to ask people what they feel about that. Because the last bear hunt, the majority of speakers and everyone who contacted them were against the hunt, and they still went ahead and did that. And I really don't even want to call it a hunt, because it was really more of a massacre in the woods where grandfather bear was killed, and as Adam said, a lactating female, cubs, bears were baited, and that's what they basically discussed on the last call, how to kill bears. When would you like to kill bears? What season would you like to kill bears? Would you like to use a pneumatic device? Would you like to use dogs? And the people who were against the bear hunt were actually weeded out and filtered out of that last call. So it is a farce. You do have foxes in the hen house. The difference is foxes need to eat to live. And in this case, we have people who were appointed, not elected, by the governor to oversee animals who they would like to kill for fun.
Susan, thank you. We also have a comment from Scott on Facebook. He says, hunting is legally allowed in Florida, and bears are a game animal. Adam's stories are largely propaganda. What do you say to that, Adam?
It's propaganda. So, like a lot of these bear hunters, like their goal is like, let me kill a bear and then show it off, like bragging rights, like holding it up. It's like, it kind of like, we have diametrically opposed opinions. I want to protect these animals and make people want to kill them for fun. It's a trophy to them. No one is surviving off of bear meat, bear fat. We don't need bear rugs. When I was at the one check station, one guy killed a bear, cut the paws off, and threw it out. And it's like just for the trophy. So I'm trying to protect these species. These people want to kill them like it's for a rush.
So these series of meetings that are going to begin today, or I guess rather be continued today, to your point, April 2nd, April 3rd, April 5th, those are all virtual meetings that people can participate in. Are you encouraging people? I mean, it sounds like Susan is a little bit more skeptical about the value of participating.
Well, we think it's important for people to understand what they are doing. So you listen to the meeting, so now you know. And, do I think they're going to have a hunt? I think they will push one, but I think there's time to get the commissioners to push back against it. But I don't know, especially with, the amendments and everything else, the preferred amendment.
What are the lobbying influences or the pressures that commissioners are facing? I mean, in this instance, we're hearing a lot of people who oppose. There have been some voices from the hunter community advocating for it as a tradition, something that, has been done for generations as part of their heritage. But very often we hear a lot of voices opposed. So what are the pressures that are on each side, and who is it primarily hunters, advocacy groups that they're hearing from?
Well, the FWC, I know from last time they were pressured by the NRA and the SCI, which is Safari Club International. I remember Marion Hammer, a lobbyist for the NRA, stated that children could not go outside and play because bears were terrorizing neighborhoods. Like the last call, the hunter guy who just messaged, like, talk about propaganda. That is pure propaganda from the NRA. And the Safari Club International is a glorified trophy hunt where you can basically like get a luxury trophy hunt, go to this log cabin, bid on it, and shoot like a bear in luxury. It's like, what is that about? So the commissioners are hearing from those groups, and I think they need to hear from the public, the people. That's where I think the pressure will come from.
Well, those meetings, as we said, start today. We have information about how people can participate on our website. You can also go to myfwc.com/hunting/bear or email bear comments at myfwc.com. Also, some good tips on those sites about how to limit bear interactions with humans. Adam Sugalski, thanks so much for being here today. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me on and giving the bears a voice.
All right. Up next, corralling the voice of the Florida Roundup. Welcome back. Well, this is a voice that local listeners will recognize from the Florida Roundup, which airs on this station every Friday at noon. But this Friday, he brings the Roundup to us, broadcasting the show live from WJCT studios. Joining me to discuss it ahead of his Friday live Roundup is award-winning journalist Tom Hudson. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Ann. Great to be with you. Thanks for the time today.
Oh, it's so nice to have you. So first of all, what brings you to town?
Well, the WJCT listeners bring us to town, and a chance to have lunch with all of your terrific supporters for First Coast Connect and WJCT and the Florida Roundup. You know, this is part of a project that we launched, several months ago to get out of the studio, right, which is a great, comfortable place to do a radio program, as you well know, but to really bring it to the audience and to stimulate conversation, community, and connections. And so Jacksonville is the latest stop for us this Friday.
You do rely so much on interaction with your audience, whether it's, phone calls, voice memos, emails. It really is a structural part of the Florida Roundup. And you get a lot of calls and comments from people in this area.
We do, very actively engaged. And I have to say that I think you seed the ground for us every Friday, frankly, with your program. And the interaction with the Jacksonville audience is always top notch. And the idea behind the Florida Roundup, now almost 10 years ago, really was to tie this so diverse and noisy state together so we could hear from one another, hear from folks in the Panhandle and the First Coast, hear from Central Florida, people in South Florida and the Keys on all of these issues and challenges and opportunities and our shared love of this place of Florida and the frustrations that we all share as Floridians as well.
So how has that changed over the years that you've been doing this? You've been a journalist for so long in this area and around the country, but it's a different time now. And doing this kind of broadcast journalism is a different challenge.
Yeah, that is saying a lot in very few words, Ann. No doubt about it. I think some of the challenge that journalism and media generally face is what we're trying to address by bringing the Florida Roundup to live audiences with our partner stations like we're doing this Friday. And the idea is to kind of drop the veil. Let's drop the fourth wall. Let's drop the curtain on what we do. It is not something magical and, astrological. This is real people. We're real people who live in the communities that we cover. And we are interested in making those connections, having conversations. Yes, certainly controversy, acknowledging controversy in our differences, but really putting a value on conversation to talk it out toward perhaps some kind of solution or having a shared vision, perhaps, or a shared agreement in at least what the facts are. And so to bring a program like this out of the studio and into the audience, I think is a big step toward trying to address kind of the, to put it politely, mystique of journalism, that somehow it is just generated beyond the audience and is not generated for and by people who are in our communities in Florida. And that's the idea behind bringing this program to Jacksonville on Friday, for instance.
So the Roundup tries to distill some of the biggest news every week, provide an explainer and then get those voices in on the subject matter. But it is a crazy time for news, I think is a easy way to put it.
Yeah, it
How do you
is.
select the topics each week? How do you distill down what's most important?
So a couple of different things that go into that, Ann, and that's a very common question, right? That I face as a program host. I'm sure you face all the time when folks see you out in public. How do you decide what you're going to talk about? How did you decide that bear hunts was going to be the topic for today's program at the beginning of the program, for instance? Some of it is, watching the news flow, right? What is gaining attention by Floridians? What are some of the biggest news? And I think importantly, really putting the audience at the center of what we do. What are the stories that they are either talking about already or that are likely to have a significant impact in their lives? I'll give you an example. Just a couple of weeks ago, we decided to turn our attention to the possibility of legislators approving a bill this session in Tallahassee to study the elimination of property taxes in the state of Florida. And I got to tell you, the moment we talked about that, moment we just kind of opened up our phone calls, we have 12 phone lines at our studios in Miami. All 12 were taken, and we were getting pinged with, lots and lots of emails. People wanted to talk about it, and there was a lot of passion on both sides that, yes, I feel that Florida property taxes, local property taxes are too high and ought to be, either reduced or eliminated. And a lot of folks also feeling very strongly about paying property taxes and what they go to support: local roads and schools and fire stations and police staffs, for instance. So it's just an indication, Ann, of the passion that Floridians feel. I don't think that we're disengaged, right, from politics and policy. I think it's a matter of presentation and really encouraging a civil debate as opposed to looking for just the points of contention and shining a light on those.
I know you've also done some really good and in-depth reporting on the insurance crisis in Florida, which is, on the simplest level, I got my bill and it's doubled. It's huge. But there are so many complexities to the problem, to the proposed solutions, to, even the way that these insurance companies are structured financially.
Yeah, as my producers will say, I love to embrace intangible concepts, right? I mean, who says that insurance is a compelling topic to talk about on the radio? But it is here in Florida, right? I mean, it is a full court press when it comes to property insurance because it is such a significant part. It has grown into such a significant part of our household budgets, and obviously protecting, for most people, their largest investment and their largest asset, which is the place that they live. And the inability, some would argue, the unwillingness on the part of state regulators and state legislators to really fully embrace this as a full state challenge. I think the two biggest issues this year for state lawmakers, property insurance again, and the condominium crisis, right, that we're experiencing throughout the state of Florida. And we have not heard a lot about either of those over the past couple of weeks. I mean, here and there, but we haven't seen that front and center in public debates and a lot of public hearings. And the time is ticking down for lawmakers to do some work on this. And I think Floridians are expecting some kind of changes for both the condominium reforms that were put in place after the Surfside tragedy in 2021, as well as continuing to address the challenges that you experiencing personally, Ann, by opening up that envelope when you get that property insurance invoice and just eye-popping numbers that you see and trying to figure out how you're going to afford it and why those premiums are going up so fast.
Right. And yet, we've heard most talk this legislative session around the subject of immigration.
Yep.
And there are a lot of topics that are dominant in Florida, dominant in the national news because of Florida. How do you help separate the kind of news that is also about Florida, but isn't necessarily the meat and potatoes news sometimes of like work that the legislative folks are doing?
Yeah, I like the point that you're leading me to here, Ann, which is I think one of our North Stars for the Florida Roundup is that this is a program that is produced for Floridians by Floridians, right? There's no parachute journalism happening of any of us coming from Washington or New York or anywhere else coming into Florida for a few days or a few hours or a few weeks and pretending we know these issues, right? We are living these issues. You yourself, as a reporter and journalist, you've got that invoice from your home insurance property carrier. So you understand what it means to see those premiums increase exponentially over the course of many years. We've seen the property taxes increase. Some folks who reside in condominiums are experiencing what it means to have their condominium association now have to set aside money for regular maintenance projects as opposed to waive those maintenance fees like they've been able to do for so many years.
Right.
So I think that this goes to the point of the Florida Roundup, which is we're trying to separate the view of Florida from maybe the other 49 states, which is, wow, let's look at this kind of crazy peninsula and panhandle at the corner of the continent, as opposed to those of us who often by choice have chosen, for one reason or another, Ann, have chosen to make our lives here and to make our professional and personal lives here.
For people, I mean, maybe not everybody listening at this hour is able to listen at noon. The idea behind the original concept of the Roundup was sort of a partnership between WLRN in Miami, WUSF in Tampa. And the goal was pretty broad. I mean, we're talking a lot about politics and legislation, but also the environment, culture, the economy writ large.
Yeah, WJCT was one of those original founding partners as well. I will take you back to the moment of kind of concept for this. It was, well, first there was an experiment leading up to the 2016 election. And if you remember back in the spring and summer of 2016, right, it was former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And there was so much noise in politics, and particularly in Florida, about this, that we wanted to create a venue, an opportunity to have Floridians hear from policy experts, political experts, and politicians on the issues that mattered to Florida, and public education. Protecting the environment. Immigration was one of those. The economy certainly was one. And so that's where the original concept came from. And then on election night, I will share with you, as I'm sure you've spent many election night in newsrooms, as I did in 2016, this particular one, we were with former Senator and former Florida Governor Bob Graham. And once it became clear that Florida had voted for Donald Trump, and then Donald Trump had won that 2016 election, the former governor said to me, I just wish there were a way where we could talk to one another, where we didn't have to shout across one another, but really talk to one another. And I thought back in the previous 13 weeks of producing what we call Decision Florida, and decided with WJCT and with all of our other partner stations across the state to open up this venue, to have this opportunity for folks in Ocala to talk directly with folks in Homestead about gun control issues, or about school safety, or about transportation challenges in Tampa or in Melbourne, because we are tied together as Floridians, and we wanted to create that space, create that community in order to do that.
And so how do you and your team work to distill voices that might be strong or passionate, but maybe not vitriolic? I mean, there's so much conversation that is really embittered and maybe not all that productive.
Yeah. It can be a challenge, certainly. I think one is the demeanor that we bring to the program each and every week when we're live, how I handle myself, to be perfectly honest. How you handle yourself as a host sets the tone for the guests. We do a lot of research in anticipation of speaking, particularly with those who are holding public office or an accountable role as a regulator, so that we know the facts, and if we think that they're straying away from the facts or not including all of the facts, we can politely, diplomatically, but also responsibly push back and provide all the information for the audience. We're not interested in telling people what to think about something. What we're interested in is what do they think and why do they think it? You know, drama is controversy is the source of all good drama, right? Any screenwriter will tell you that. But I firmly believe that civility is where understanding starts, and we can have disagreements as Floridians. We can think of different conclusions, but we can't make up our facts, right? And we ought to be able to have a shared set of facts, even if we draw different conclusions from them.
So as we said, you're going to be here in town on Friday at WJCT Studios. You're going to be doing a live broadcast of the Florida Roundup. People will arrive at 11:30 and have lunch. Can you give us a little preview of who you might be talking to or the topics that you're going to tackle?
Well, we're going to dive headlong into one of the most controversial topics that you've already alluded to with this legislative session, which is on the topic of immigration enforcement at the local level. You know, Jacksonville is at the center of this debate now, not only in Florida, but really nationwide, as the Jacksonville Council has passed what all believe to be the first in the nation local criminalization of illegal immigration. Of course, the mayor still has to decide whether or not she's going to sign it or veto it. But we're going to have two council members on, one in support, one in opposition, and really flush out what this ordinance does, right? So we can have this set of facts, what those in support want it to accomplish, and what those in opposition are concerned about. So we're going to have that kind of conversation. We're also going to talk about the explosive growth in St. Johns County. You know, this is just something remarkable in a state that is used to explosive population growth. But what we've seen this decade in St. Johns County is 20% plus growth over the first 4 years of this decade. It far outstrips anything any other county has seen in Florida. And so managing that growth, particularly from the public education side, we're going to have the superintendent on to talk about that. And of course, get into the big changes that have happened led by Florida in public education over the past few years. And then talking about professional women's basketball coming to Jacksonville with the Upshot League, but also the possibility of the city making a play for a WNBA expansion team.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we may be hearing more on immigration. We understand that the mayor is going to be speaking on that at 1 o'clock today. So news will be moving on. Tom Hudson, it's so nice to talk to you. We have links on our website for people who want to sign up for the Friday event, but thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you.
And thanks for the hospitality. Folks can reach us radio@thefloridaroundup.org. Looking forward to seeing you.
Thanks, Tom. Coming up next, how you can help migrating birds stay on course with a...
I'm Ernest White II. I've traveled the world as host of my TV show Fly Brother, and I'm looking forward to returning to my hometown of Jacksonville and sharing these stories of friendship and the transformative power of travel with you. Join me at WJCT Studios Monday, April 7th for an evening of connecting, food, giveaways, and a sneak peek at Fly Brother Season 4. Go to WJCT.org/events for more information about this free event. Let's fly.
This week on Kingpins and Catalysts.
Once he passed, I just felt like that's it. I don't want to make anything else ever again.
We're telling the story of music pioneer Willie Evans Jr., big dreams and profound losses.
But there are also elements that are beautiful, something that you will carry and will make you glad to be who you are.
I'm Ann Schindler. This is my new podcast about the trailblazers who shaped the First Coast. Listen to Kingpins and Catalysts wherever you get your podcasts.
On the next Florida Roundup, we will have a live studio audience from Jacksonville. It's the first city to criminalize illegal immigration, but it's not law just yet. How should a city enforce federal immigration laws? Email us radio@thefloridaroundup.org. Plus, a former WNBA commissioner has been exploring bringing a team to Jacksonville. Got any suggestions for a team name? Email radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then join us Friday noon until 1.
Columbia University graduate Mahmoud Khalil's arrest by ICE has garnered national attention. Nearly a dozen more international students have been detained since, as the crackdown on pro-Palestinian supporters continues. Who gets to dissent under Trump? That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, the night skies are often filled with birds making their arduous seasonal migration, and dark is essential for their safety. Joining me to discuss a local initiative to help migratory birds find their way is Elizabeth Filippini. Excuse me, Filippelli. I got it right before, and then I lost it. Filippelli, Conservation Director at the Duval Audubon Society. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you for having us, Ann.
Also, Ashante Green, Sustainability Manager for the City of Jacksonville. Good morning, Ashante.
Good morning.
So let's start, if we can. Why is this region so crucial for migratory birds?
Sure. There's 4 flyways on the United States, and we're the second largest flyway. We're in the Atlantic Flyway, and we just have a lot of birds migrating over us, and Jacksonville is right in the path. So artificial light adversely affects the birds. So we're asking folks to dim their lights during migration to help the birds.
What's a flyway?
There's 4 flyways coming from Canada all the way down to the down past into Central America.
Okay,
Yeah.
and
It's
these
a
are
birding flyway, yes.
the birds stick to these similar paths year after year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so what kind of birds are we talking about?
The ones we talk about are the smaller ones. We call them passerines, the ovenbirds, the warblers, not so much our cardinals that we love, our eastern bluebirds that stay. So it's more the travelers. The red knot, believe it or not, travels 388 marathons twice a year to go up and down. Yes, the red knot.
Yeah, that's
It's
a
hero.
shorebird.
It's a shorebird.
Yeah. So this is a path that is impacted by light. And it's interesting, Ashante. I mean, we're looking at this map, and we'll show a shot of it, but it's basically, it measures how many birds are in the night sky. We can't see them, but they're almost a blanket flying above us every night.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also critical to understand that birds, while they're pretty and we love to watch them, they're so important not only for our economy, but our health. So it's amazing that we're really prioritizing birds and asking folks to turn off non-essential lights during bird migration season.
I mean, we think of birds, up in the sky. I have heard about concerns about skyscrapers as, a problem for birds if they're flying into them or they're reflective. But why is what's happening at the ground level in my own home significant?
Sure, that's a great question, and thank you for asking it. Actually, skyscrapers are not the biggest problem. It's actually approximately 50% of the strikes happen in our homes, believe it or not.
Oh.
And in buildings, it's usually the first 3 floors. So we actually did a free bird-friendly window assessment with the Ashante downtown, and we looked at some of the buildings that the city owns, and we found some reflective buildings that we want to help and retrofit and get them fixed so that the birds won't smash into.
How do you retrofit a building that's already got its reflective windows up?
I'm so glad you asked. This is one of the ways. They're called visual markers. I don't know if everybody can see them.
People who are watching will be able to see it, but it's basically a transparent kind
They're
of
like little-
dotted
Correct.
surface.
Yeah, and how it works is the dots need to be placed 2 inches apart. And that's how the birds look at this and they say, oh, I can't squeeze between here because we have hummingbirds, and hummingbirds are the smallest birds. So they have to be able to look at this and go, ruh-roh, I can't fit in here, and avoid the window. I want to mention one more thing because Stacy asked about this. This is a $9.99 pen on Amazon that you could do the same thing to your windows.
It's a what kind of pen?
It's a white Sharpie pen,
I gotcha.
oil-based.
Okay, so you can actually draw those on your windows yourself. Ashante, why is the city of Jacksonville concerned about this? I mean, what is the interaction between bird populations, migrations, and sustainability? What's the connection?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Mayor Donna Deegan became the first mayor in the state of Florida to proclaim lights out nights during bird migration. And it's really important, as I alluded to earlier, with our climate, Jacksonville is the perfect place for bird watching, and ecotourism, nature tourism is really big when it comes to our economic drivers in the state of Florida. So it's in our best interest for an economic standpoint. But when it comes to environmental sustainability, birds also help with pest control. They also help with a lot of different things to ensure food security. So it's more than just a trendy thing. It's really preserving the way of life, not only for those travelers, but for every citizen here in Jacksonville.
And I guess we should be clear. I mean, the light somehow distracts them
Mhm.
from their migratory path.
Correct. Yeah, birds fly at night. These birds fly at night because they don't want to get killed by predators, and because it's cooler, so it's easier for them. And they fly by the moon and the stars, and the artificial light confuses them. It's like a shiny object for us. They get confused. They fly down. They end up landing in a tree. They see a reflection in the morning when they wake up, and then smack thud, they end up killing themselves.
And we know that these birds are on a pretty tough journey. I mean, they're flying sometimes hundreds, sometimes
Correct.
thousands of miles.
Correct.
Yeah. So if you don't believe us, there's actually this, as I said, this graphic that you brought. Tell us what this depicts and where people can find it.
Sure. It's called Birdcast, everybody. You can find it online, and it was built by Cornell University, Colorado University, and Amherst. And basically, what it does is it takes the weather data, and the weather data people take the weather people take the weather data, and the bird people take the bird data, and they're able to track how many birds are flying over us, each of the flyways. Now they're getting so good with the data, they're getting down to the type of birds. Pretty soon they'll be able to tell you what type of birds based upon the size.
And if you go to this site, it'll tell you that last night there was 1.2 million birds that flew overhead.
Correct. That was a high night for us. Yep.
Wow. Extraordinary. Well, advice, turn the lights off, building dots. And where could they get information if people are interested in finding it?
Absolutely. Thanks, Ann. Certainly on our website, DuvalAudubon.org. You can go to the zoo. The zoo is one of our partners. You can look up the zoo as well. And may I say thank you to our foundation.
Soundstage on Saturday, April 12th at 7 p.m. Tickets and more information at jacksmusic.org/JME events.